Thanks a lot for staying with us. Let's take a look now at stories making headlines on Nigerian newspapers. Of course, we'll also be dipping in to check out the global trends at this time. Here in Nigeria, we begin with this Nigeria. And of course, the big story of the day talking about the nationwide protest is reflected in this Nigeria. We'll later see that is also being reflected in other papers. So this Nigeria says NLC dares FG over its protests on the lingering Asuu strike, grounds activities, high turnout of workers in Lagos, Ibadan, Benin, Port Harcourt, and others. That's for this Nigeria. Blueprint is next. It labels the NLC's move as daring, resolve Asuu strike now or face nationwide shutdown. NLC warns the federal government. And Daily Independent is also towing a similar line, saying workers threaten to shut down country if FG ignores protest. Of course, it promises to be another day of protest. We'll see how that pans out. For the leadership, it says at nationwide protest, Labour gives FG 2 weeks to meet Asu's demands. Well, that's for the leadership. Kelly has some other papers with him.
Well, the major rider, The Nation, says 2 officers, 6 soldiers killed in attack on presidential guards. The bodies of captain, lieutenant, others found. And away from this, The Nation, this day, of course, has a similar rider. 2 captains, 1 soldier in heroic deaths as guards brigade on routine patrol is ambushed in Buari. Well, that's this day. The Punch is next. Iswa plots massive attacks on Lagos, Kaduna, others. Security alert in FCT. Call to bar venue changed amid fear of attack. This will be an interesting read. So, security reports about the plots of attacks for Lagos. Interesting. Well, First News says terrorists stockpiling arms to attack Katsina, Lagos, Abuja, others. A security report reveals terrorists stockpiling arms to attack Katsina, Lagos, Abuja, others. And away from First News, The Guardian, another Nigerian newspaper, has as its rider, its main rider, terrorism, Senate's mom, Abuja resident on high alert over planned attacks. Senate mom, Abuja residents on high alert over planned attacks. And the Daily Trust gets our attention next and has a different rider away from insecurity. 2023, North lags behind as voter registration ends in 4 days. North lags behind as voter registration ends in 4 days. That's the Daily Trust. And Business Day gets our focus next. Says religion raises political stakes, risk dividing Nigerians. The major headliner therefore Business Day. And away from Business Day, the national economy also gets our focus. It says each Nigerian will spend 25,000 naira more on road transportation by 2025. A report says each Nigerian will spend 25,000 naira more on road transportation by 2025. And of course, finally, on my part here, Nigerian News Direct, prepaid meter intervention funds diversion. Now, CBN seeks court order to freeze accounts of Mojek Integrated Power and 10 meter providers. So that's the Nigerian News Direct. Kemi.
In the UK now, the Guardian newspaper has it that ministers in Britain allegedly played fast and loose with £777 million in COVID testing contracts. It's been said to be a damning report now on the government, where the award of contracts was said to have been done unfairly. So that's for The Guardian. Financial Times is next, warning by world's biggest consumer names as they announce soaring price increases. Of course, this is coming amidst global inflation, especially fuel inflation. Finally now, Saudi Gazette has an update on the Crown Prince's visit to Greece, where he promises the Greek Prime Minister that he didn't come empty-handed and promises to bring forth cheaper and efficient renewable energy, not just to Greece, but other parts of Europe. So, well, gentlemen, those are the papers and how they are leaning this morning. Of course, there's much talk, understandably, about the nationwide protests now in day 2. And if care is not taken, NLC has warned that there will be, a more louder language on its part, talking about a 3-day warning strike. And of course, what is weighty about this moves by NLC is the fact that several of their affiliates have already expressed support for the nationwide protest. A few days ago, we even had a fear in our area that maybe the electricity workers had also given us an advance notice of what could happen if there is indeed a strike. But so far, no move yet by the federal government, but it's still all about the NLC workers and how best. But then there's also an issue about how one would measure the impact of yesterday's protest.
Well, you know, if we go back to 2020 when we had the EndSARS protest, it started as a complaint against a particular aspect of Nigerian life. And then it snowballed into a mass protest against the system, and it had even an air of revolutionary fervor and even fiesta, you know, in the country. And then it snowballed into something that we didn't expect: destruction of lives, of properties, a total mayhem, deaths, blood, and all kinds of accusations of tyranny and so on. Illusion and fact became mixed together.
Absolutely. And
so on and so forth. We hope that this NLC protest is not going to be a beginning of a time bomb. You know, we hope that this is just what it is, a show of civic disgust, a show of civic disobedience, a show of civic disenchantment, and remove from the tyranny of state, from the indifference of state, from its inability to convert promise into fulfillment. I said earlier that the messaging of the protest itself has caged the NLC to Asuu solidarity protest. And it remains so, no matter how they try to coin it. But it can change very rapidly. You know, that's what happened with the so-called EndSARS protest, which itself snowballed into something else. Well, these ones are not organized by young people, but older people can have it hijacked, because we know that the EndSARS protest began as a section of the responsible young people. And then the responsible young people did not have the vision, the coordination to create a kind of platform and leadership. And then they were hijacked by the drag, by the dross of society. Right. They took it over.
I recall. Yeah, so
this is probably another moment of self-reflection,
right,
of self-rumination.
Right.
And it's also an opportunity for the state to engage these issues. If you say 2 weeks ultimatum, make sure it is 2 weeks and get it over with.
Right.
Or else
I
it can snowball into something else.
That Files, one of the proponents of the NSAS protest, I recall that when he was kind of doing like a post-mortem of the way things panned out in such an ugly dimension after the peaceful protests, looking at the issue of hijacking, he said in future, if they would need to come out with that kind of with that kind of outlook, there would be need to do a better coordination of people who participate in those mass rallies, as we saw. But give it to the NLC. When we asked the comrade who came in yesterday, he said this would not be the first time that we would have rallies, protests of this nature, and so the fears of possible hijack, as expressed by the federal government, will not come into play. And another big plus for the NLC was the solidarity it also enjoyed by key members of the public, prominent Nigerians, including Kemi Fola Adeyemo yesterday.
I mean, here in Lagos, it was interesting when I saw the interview he also granted. It was really, indeed, very interesting. But I was just going to mention, just as a veteran here has mentioned, the fact that the NLC, one had expected that, or Nigerians had expected that should have done this way earlier. I seem to also think that this may be sort of connected to 2023. I honestly think so. I may be wrong. I stand to be corrected, but I think somehow...
Which part now? the protests or the
no,
fears?
No, the connection to 2023.
We've actually seen a prominent politician connecting it.
To 2023. So that's my position,
election,
because Nigerians and the workers will argue that even the minimum wage, which many have tagged as miserable. I mean, they should
not
have...
living.
Many states have not even been paying them. So why didn't the NLC rise up for many months before now? And also, I'm also a bit concerned and worried that it's becoming a threat to our society for Nigerians to express their democratic rights. So for every time now we want to see people protest or stage a peaceful walk, it looks like the government of the day seems a bit threatened. And that's because of the hijack, of course, as we saw in the NSAS movement. As I said yesterday, we have not recovered from the damages, the havoc wreaked during the protest when it was hijacked. So I think that we need to do something to fix it. We're in a democratic system, an environment. Nigerians should be able to express themselves freely and peacefully through protest. So we should ensure that this issue of hijacking, and please, the hijackers too, I don't know what we can do about them, how we can sensitize them, but I think
in Lagos and not just other states, we saw, and in other states, I should say, we saw the presence of security officials, especially the policemen who were on guard. I remember you asked Sharon the crucial question yesterday: what role were they going to play there? But it appeared that they've always been, part of the protest. They are always on ground for various protests, to maintain the peace.
That could change,
and all that. But looking at the outlook yesterday, it didn't appear that they were there to disrupt the protest. Another takeaway from the protest yesterday was that some of the state participants engaged or presented their letters, their grievances to the governors or even representatives of the governor. And so they said that this on the role of governors will kind of spur the federal government to act more positively as, of course, we continue to experience an impasse between the government and Asuu.
The statesman Cicero once said, to stumble twice over a stone is a proverbial disgrace. Don't expect that the federal government is not looking at this development with a dove's eye, because of what they saw in the first instance.
Right.
And they will get a lot of justification if they see any evidence of a spark. And you know that the terrorists can want to take advantage of this also to strike.
Come at a time
especially with the reports we are seeing in the news, the security reports of
we're in a nation where there are two kind of sieges going on. You have the siege of labor, and you have the siege of insecurity. And the nation is trapped in between like a mouse.
Right, that's a valid
And there is a tendency that the mouse will now act like a snake, you know, push to the wall and strike on both sides. And it becomes ruthless. The venom will spread on all sides.
Right. These are indeed,
so labor has to be very careful.
Absolutely.
Because they should also be aware that this thing can be taken advantage of, not just by rowdy youths, but by bandits.
But even worse. All right.
They can sneak in there and create chaos.
Right.
So there's a security issue involved
that we
even in
cannot
this
take
protest.
lightly.
Absolutely.
Yes.